Hello everyone, my name is Luchi. It is my great pleasure to present our work on rebounding bandits for modeling satiation effects to you today. This is a joint work with Fatma, Zach, and Alan. Traditionally, in most ML research literature, human preferences are assumed to be static, and ML decisions are assumed to have no influence on them. However, it is very important to realize that human minds are actually dynamical systems. A person eating pizza for lunch may feel diminished pleasure upon eating pizza again for dinner, or even getting upset when being offered pizza again next noon. Thus, when designing algorithms that interact with people, one should think of machine learning decisions like recommendations to be inputs to these dynamical systems that will potentially impact people's beliefs and preferences. The dynamics we study here is satiation, which is prevalent in real-world settings. Satiation stands for the phenomena that enjoyment declines due to repetitive exposure to an item. It depends on both the characteristics of the item and the sequence of exposure to it. For example, after someone watches my yoga video, they may not want to see another yoga video again immediately. Likewise, after being suggested by some political news, one may find reading more of it to be exhaustive. On the other hand, when the item has different characteristic, the satiation effect may be different. For example, after listening to some jazz music, one may want to keep listening to it for a longer time. In this work, we think of this problem in a bandit setup. At each time t, we're given k options to choose from. We choose to pull an arm and receive a reward. Our goal then is to maximize the expected cumulative reward for a fixed horizon t. In a rebounding bandit setup, the reward of each arm doesn't have a fixed distribution. Instead, the expected reward of each arm evolves based on how the arm has been pulled before. Learning from behavioral science literatures, we know that the characterization of satiation we want to capture here is that the expected reward should monotonically decline by diminishing amounts with consecutive pulls and rebound gradually by diminishing amounts when the arm is not pulled. To do so, we use a linear dynamical system to model satiation. The satiation of arm k at time t equals to gamma k times its previous satiation and whether it has been pulled for the last time or not, plus a noise term that captures unobserved factors. Here, gamma k is a satiation retention factor that's between 0 and 1. The control of this dynamical system is then the ML decision, whether to pull that arm or not. The dynamic starts when the arm is pulled for the first time. Given the satiation, the reward of an arm equals to its initial reward minus the product between the exposure influence factor and the current satiation the person has on that item. There are existing works that study the satiation phenomena in bandit settings. Previous behavioral assumptions proposed in machine learning literatures include assuming that the expected reward is a monotonic function of the number of pulls. This is not very ideal because although one would imagine that keep recommending the same item will make the person's enjoyment towards it decline, once we wait for some time, the enjoyment of the item for the person may actually rebound back. Another type of assumption assumes the expected reward to be an increasing function of the time elapsed since the last pull of the arm. This is also not capturing some of the characteristics of satiation. For example, given the below two sequences of consumption that both had Chinese food at time step 5, it's probably more reasonable to eat pizza for the first sequence compared to the second sequence. So satiation is really not just about time since the last consumption of an item, but it's about all previous assumptions of the same item. Lastly, there's also assumption on the expected reward being a function of a fixed window of past pulls. Compared to previous behavioral assumptions on satiation in ML literature, our model is drawn from the characterization of satiation from social science literatures. When analyzing the optimal strategy for rebounding bandits, we start with a simplified case where we know the dynamics and the dynamics are deterministic with no noise in the system. In that case, finding an optimal policy can be written as a bilinear program, and the greedy policy, which is the policy that puts the arm with the highest expected reward given its historical pulls at each time step, is in general not optimal. We then consider the case when all arms exhibit same characteristics. That is, their parameters mu k, gamma k, lambda k are the same. The reason why we consider it is that we want to see when what only matters is the influence of repetitive exposures instead of the properties of the items. And under that setting, what the optimal strategy would be. This could happen, for instance, when all arms are from the same category. In this case, finding an optimal policy is equivalent to finding a max k cut on a complete graph of t vertices with edge weights between vertex I and j being lambda times gamma to the power j minus I. Gamma and lambda are the common parameters across arms in this case. This edge weight actually captures the satiation influence that one can reduce by not showing the same item at time I and j. And in this case, we could show that the greedy policy is optimal and is equivalent to pulling the arms cyclically, with the cycle being 1 through k up to a permutation of arm indices. This suggests that diversification is the optimal strategy when the arms share the same properties. When the characteristics across arms are different, we construct a W lookahead policy that picks the next optimal W steps and follow them and repeat this process until it reaches the last time step. Compared to finding an optimal policy, the lookahead policy can be planned much faster. In terms of expected cumulative reward, a W lookahead policy is on the order of T over W away from an optimal policy. In the below plots, we experiment with 5 arms with different parameters. On the left-hand side, we have the horizon T to be 30. The red line shows the optimal value. The blue dots show the value of the W lookahead policies with different W values. Under the same hardware configuration, the optimal policy is solved by Gurobi in more than 20 minutes, versus all the W lookahead policies are found within 3 seconds. The right-hand side plot shows the result when T equals to 100. In the more general setting, where we have unknown stochastic satiation dynamics, we first estimate the parameters, gammas and lambdas, using historical data, and then perform planning. In the interest of time, we will not present results of this setting here. So here are some high-level takeaways. The first thing is that it is important to think about human minds as dynamical systems. To that end, one should think of ML decisions like recommendations as inputs to these dynamical systems that could potentially have large impact in human preferences and beliefs. Satiation is one such dynamics, but there are many other important ones yet to be explored. Secondly, social science literatures provide behavioral assumptions on those dynamics. Although sometimes there may not be quantitative characterization of the problem, the literature provides really important qualitative characterization of the phenomena that we want to take into account. And finally, these two ways of thinking can help us design better algorithms that interact with humans. Thank you for your attention. If you would like to read more about this paper, please check out it on arXiv. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to contact me. And we would like to thank David, Biswa, Ian, Sai, and Matt for many helpful discussions. Thank you.